And right now, Elk Grove city leaders are cracking down on e-bikes and scooters with new rules aimed at improving safety. The ordinance sets guidelines for where riders can use sidewalks and bikeways, who can ride as a passenger, and how riders must behave on the road. It also bans reckless riding, unauthorized racing, and trick riding. Police will have new enforcement options, including issuing citations and impounding e-bikes or scooters when they deem it to be necessary. So what happens to e-bike riders who push the limit, end up wrecking or hurting someone else? They usually end up in the emergency room. So let's bring in ER Dr. Terrence Horan from Kaiser Permanente. Dr. Horan, good to have you here today. So what makes e-bikes different from traditional bikes as far as what you're treating patients for?
Absolutely. So the speeds on the e-bikes, the sheer mechanism and physics of the e-bikes is very different than a traditional bike, a non-e-bike or e-scooter or something like that. So we're not just seeing injuries, you scraped your knee, you scraped your elbow, a little road rash here and there that needs, topical antibiotic ointment. We're seeing major multiple bone fractures, internal injuries, potentially brain bleeds, major injuries that are not, we're talking urgent care, but we're talking more trauma bay.
Is this something new for you in the ER since these e-bikes have become so prevalent? How long have you been dealing with e-bike specific injuries?
I think in the last couple of years, they've definitely increased. Obviously, you see a lot more of them on the road. And when they're coming in, we're not just seeing the typical traditional bikes and there's not that mechanism there, but now there's a lot more.
What's the best way for e-bike riders to proceed safely so they don't see you in the ER?
Perfect, yeah, and so I think the key to this is prevention. So like you were talking about, to really know the laws, to know what type of bikes you can ride, where you can ride them, because we're seeing very young people on these bikes, and so they might not know the traffic laws to really go through with that, and so they learn about that. The other thing that I would really recommend is stay visible, so bright helmets, bright colors, reflective things, and then the last thing which I always would recommend is stay predictable. So knowing what other cyclists are going to do, and know what so the motorists know what you're going to do, pedestrians know what you can do, and kind of goes back to the laws, hand signals, knowing when they're going to brake. We just don't have that advantages like we would in a vehicle that they don't have on the motorized vehicles.
Are e-bike riders subject to the same rules of the road as other forms of bikes, let's say a regular fast 10 speed, or are e-bikes more regulated in terms of a moped or motorcycle?
So my understanding is they have to follow the same rules of the road, just like I'm a cyclist and I follow the rules of the road. I think there's some specified rules about the class of bike that they can ride. I'm not sure exactly the class 1, 2, 3 type of thing, but that's the great idea to look at those local laws, look at the new crackdowns, because I think a lot of the local laws are also learning about these bikes, and they're developing these laws to really look on the most updated versions of them.
Last question, when you're treating these people and they're pretty banged up, do they ever say to you, Doc, I'm not going to do this again? Is there a good feeling of remorse and change of ways?
I think most of these injuries we're seeing in the pediatric population, so they're invincible.
Yeah,
but
I
think the parents get the clue especially when there's some major injuries, when we're dealing with much more than the scrapes and bruises that we would deal with a non-e-bike.
All right, Dr. Horan, Kaiser Permanente. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you coming by.